So just very briefly about me, I'm based in London, also as mentioned before, and currently I'm a product design and research lead at a healthcare startup, and I've been in product design and research for 8 years. And in the last 3-4 years, I think I've been doing some side gigs on VR research and some experimentations. Next. So in this presentation, I just wanted to talk about how I ran 3 of my most recent usability studies for VR, for some VR experiences, and also things that I learned that that are, like, would be good to know before you start a VR usability testing study. Next. So the first experience is a first-player shooting mobile VR game. It's a mobile game that doesn't require like a professional headset, but it requires like a slightly better headset than cardboard, because it has to just sit straight, like sit very tight on your head, and it requires a gamepad, as opposed as like it's not gaze controlled. So in this study, I assessed pre-game experience, which is like navigating around before the game itself, like menu, selecting like various levels and modes, and also the comfort of heads-up display when playing the game. And as the result of the study, we've changed information architecture quite drastically, and also the pre-game UI, and also adjusted like the heads-up display in the game. So the next one. I don't know whether you see GIFs okay, because it doesn't really show well for me. So the second study is Tori, which is animation in VR. It's a professional tool for animating in VR, and it requires a much more powerful PC, so it can be run on mobile. And in this study, I assessed also the pre-game experience and also onboarding, and how easy it is to learn and pick up this tool for a new user. And also as the result, yeah, no, not as the result, I'll talk about it later, but it has to be, so I ran it on Oculus Rift, and it was a very interesting study, I'd say, because it's a very complex tool, but developers developed it in a way that it can be used by a kid. So they used a lot of real-life metaphors, as opposed to, like, 2D metaphors that are present in like animation tools. And it was very interesting to see how people are actually interacting with those 3D, like real-life metaphors, rather than like the regular one, and whether it was comfortable for them to use that. So yeah, it was a very interesting project to work on. And then the third project, next, is Masterpiece Motion, which is a 3D rigging tool in VR. For those who don't know, 3D rigging is applying this skeleton and joints to a 3D model, so then later on you can bend, and the model can move. So this study was also run on Oculus Rift. Yeah, and I was also assessing how easy it is to learn the tool and how comfortable it is to use it. It's quite a new tool. Yep, so these are 3 studies that, next, that I created this presentation based on. So again, this presentation is mainly about how I set up and how you approach a new VR usability testing project. So next. First of all, with all these 3 studies, these were side gigs. So I'm a user researcher at work, but like in our lab, we would do usability testing for our products, not for my side gigs. So for these projects, I didn't have a lab, and I ran them in a home studio, which I think worked really, really well. And I think I would argue that it probably worked even better than in a lab, because it was a more like real life environment, rather than, like, sitting in a lab and having a mirror on one side, having lots of cameras. So it was more natural, and I think the participants of all these studies like felt a little bit like they came to a friend to play games rather than, you know, to participate in a real study. Next. So the important thing to still like to have is to actually screen record, but also I use my phone to video record a participant, so you can see like gestural interactions and if there are any ergonomics issues, or like how people interact generally, like how they use the controllers and everything. So I had 2 recordings at the same time. Then next. Also, as a moderator, it was very interesting where I should position myself, and I found that the best way to position yourself is like next to a participant on the side, like not in the back, far enough so they have enough space to use their arms, but also has to be close enough for me to be able to see what they're doing, but also if they lose orientation or if they're just about to injure themselves or something, I have to be very close to be able to kind of direct them or protect them or guide them. So I was just sitting next to them. Next. That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take the presentation back if you guys don't mind.
So, guardian space.
I'm not sure. Sorry, guys. Is it somehow? So sorry if I interrupted, but I'm not sure if someone wanted to share his screen or.
No, that probably was a mistake, just an accidental tap.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, Brian, please. Sorry, guys. Can you see Anastasia's presentation or?
Wrong button, sorry. No.
Okay, I'll share again. Sorry about that. Okay.
Right. So the next thing is guardian space, and it goes without saying that you have to set up safe space. But and also like when you're setting up your Oculus Rift or HTC Vive, you will set it up anyway. But what's important is when I tested with people, not everyone experienced VR before, so it's important to let them know how it's gonna like what it looks like inside when you wear a headset. So with the guardian space, when you approach the edge of the safe area, then you'll see this grid or like a cage. So it's like I found it always useful to let people know what it's going to look like and what it means. So that's one of the things to consider. Then the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beware of spinning and rolling chairs. This is an important one, especially for headsets that have a wire, for 3 reasons. First of all is when people are spinning, the wire can just get caught in the chair. But then also, it's really easy to lose the sense of orientation where you're facing. So if the chair can move, and especially like if someone is testing the new experience, they start looking around, looking like sideways and back, and then they start facing the wrong direction, and then the camera doesn't capture them, and then the controllers don't get captured by sensors. So it's better not to let them move left and right all the time. But also another thing is if the chair is moving, they can shift the center of the safe space, so they would not see the grid, the edge of the grid. But if they, for example, like make like a rapid arm move, they can just bang their head, like hand against something. So it's really, yeah, beware of spinning chairs. Don't do that. Next. Oh, and this one is hygiene. This is just shocking, to be honest. I've tried so many VR like shows and experiences, and I've never seen anyone cleaning the headset or like doing anything to the headset. And you're just sharing the same thing with all the people who tried it before, and it's like all the sweat and makeup. And I think it's just terrible. So when I do usability testing, I have like this pack of one-time use masks, and then I just tape them to the headset. So with my usability testing, no one ever shared their sweat with each other. So I think hygiene is really important, and we all know, like with this pandemic thing, that you don't want to share your germs with anyone else. Next. Yeah, this one, prepare for motion sickness, headaches, and fatigue. It's one of the most known like side effects or like harmful effects of virtual reality that people might experience, like feeling sick or like having migraines, headaches, fatigue. And you should prepare for that, but you should also prepare a participant. So ask them not to drive to your place and from your place, because if they experience migraine, then it's dangerous. And also like prepare some water. It's also quite challenging because it has to be close, that water, but you have to be careful so they don't knock it out of the table because they don't see anything. So what I did, I just had a bottle that is like non-breakable, non-spillable, and that will be in the reach of me as a moderator rather than in the reach of the participant. Next. And for the same reason, for the harmful health effects, prepare for shorter sessions and breaks. Normally when we run usability testing sessions for like 2D experiences for like some websites or apps, they can last for 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. With VR, I found that after 30 minutes, it's quite tiring and people start getting like uncomfortable. So normally you would see that like if a person is feeling unwell or uncomfortable, but I first of all like to ask them, like check up on them every 10, 15 minutes, whether they want to take a break. But also like it's just good to prepare for short sessions, much shorter than in normal usability testing. Next. Oh, and armrest. This one is, I would say, controversial because it depends on the experience. You obviously don't want anything in front of anyone who's experiencing something in VR, because like they would start like moving their hands, and you don't want them to bend their hands against anything. But with Masterpiece Motion and Tvori, people had their arms in the air all the time, and they started like every single person experienced gorilla arm syndrome when like your arms are just like so tired and fatigued. And in this example, this user, she was sitting further from the desk, but she moved closer to the desk to rest her arm, and she didn't mind having the grid in front of her, so long she could rest her arm. So I think for some experiences, it probably is even nice to start having the desk in front of you. So before they wear a headset on, they just have the desk, and they know that they have the desk in front of them, so they will never bang their hands against it. So depending on the experience, like again, just consider what's comfortable and what's not comfortable. So in this case, like having an armrest is something beneficial. Next. Oh yes, and consider that they might not hear you. With the first player shooting game, when people had like headphones in, there were like loads of sounds and like sound effects and shooting. And I noticed, I think, on the first person when I was trying to talk to them, they didn't hear me. So I touched them and they just jumped. So before the session, just communicate with them how you're going, that they might not hear you, and you will have questions, obviously, because you have a script to follow. But communicate with them how you're going to to ask questions. So it's just like, it's going to be a shoulder tap. So just so they are aware of it. Yep. And the last thing, the last but not least, here is check, like, especially if people are new to VR and they haven't experienced things and they don't know like what they're meant to experience or how things should be, like have a checklist of things that, like, to make sure that everything is all set. Like, for example, when I was testing on this girl, and it wasn't sharp for her because the lenses were set for a person before her, but she thought it was like, oh, it's a gimmicky tool, like it's not meant to be sharp, like it's just meant to be a little bit off. But of course, it's not the case. So just make sure that, like, they see sharply, that the sound is on, that the sound is not too loud or too low, that the headset is quite tight. It shouldn't be too tight, but it shouldn't be wobbly on the head, and that they have controllers very secure on their wrists. There is a wristband, special wristband, so like, you know, they don't lose or like break the controller, but also that the controllers are in the right hands, because sometimes it's easy for them to pick a different one, and then be very confused when they're actually experiencing it. Next. Right. The last one wasn't last but not least. This one is last but not least. So this is something different from also 2D usability testing experiences. Knowing that VR can cause all those harmful health effects, it's really nice to do this questionnaire that is a compilation of a standard motion sickness questionnaire, plus edit some questions for like different harmful effects that I experienced, that other people experienced, like shoulder aches, or like discomfort from HMD, and like tiredness of arms, or like repetitive strain syndrome. So before and after the testing, I would ask people to assess how they feel, like general discomfort, fatigue, eye strain, and like all those things. And after the experience, I ask the same thing, just to measure like whether the experience contributed to them feeling worse. So in a few cases with Masterpiece Motion especially, everyone had shoulder ache, and everyone had like really tired arms. So this is something that I passed on to the developers, and this was something for them to consider how to change that experience. So arms should not be always in the air, and there is a little bit of time for the arms to rest too in the experience. So yep, this was something. Yeah, and in the rest, I'd say that it's quite similar to just a regular usability testing, where you have the selection of 5 to 8 users that fall under your target audience, that you have the script, you run through the script, you collect, observe, and categorize all the findings, and then present it to your team, to developers or designers. And then the next one. Yeah, this is just an example of how I did the matrix of findings, where on the left you have just the list of all tasks, and then each column is a participant. So then you can just, like, I just wrote down like different quotes or observations against participant and task. So then you can just easily see like how each task was performed, like overall by the crowd. So yeah, this is just the way I do findings. Next, yeah, you were right. Yeah, and then the last bit is just about presenting findings. I found it also slightly different from a generic 2D usability testing experience. In all these 3 studies, they were run remotely. So normally I like having a presentation and talk through all the findings first before like sending out the report, because in that case I can highlight what didn't go well, or like really highlight issues, because it's much easier when you speak. with all these 3 studies, and I think it's quite relevant with pandemic too, if you're doing usability testing. Obviously, it wasn't that easy to sit all together in the room, so I did a presentation with very short GIFs. And what's great about PCVR is that you actually see with the user's eyes, like in this GIF, and you see users' hands, and you can just experience their pain if they're going through the pain. So like in this example, this person was trying to open the scene, just dragging it onto the space till they finally figure out that they have to long hold and see the load button. So like mainly you don't even need a video of a person of how they interact like with this, because like it's not needed. Next. Well, generally it's not needed. Unless it is a ergonomics issue. Like in this example, if it was just a video of user typing on the keyboard, you wouldn't understand the issue. But having a video of a person next to it, you can see like how they're like stretching their arms, and this was a gigantic, an enormous keyboard, so it was like really uncomfortable to use. So this is something that Masterpiece Motion had to shrink down to make it a little bit more comfortable. So again, like if it's an ergonomics issue and if someone's like keeps like doing this all the time, it's very good to have a video of them next to what they see too. Next. And this is the very last thing. Last thing is assessing changes. I guess it's not really going always, like it can't go into the presentation, but generally as a user researcher, I really like to assess changes that the team are doing to the designs, and it's really nice to see how the product progresses. So in this example, it was Tori's tool for coloring and painting. So the user struggled to apply color to the snowballs, and they were just like, it was painful. They were just trying to grab the color. Then they were like, okay, let me get a pencil, and they were trying to color it with a pencil, but then they realized it's just drawing in the air, and then they couldn't get rid of the pencil too. It was like really painful, which like was presented as a finding during the study. But then next. After that, they created, it's just this super amazing tool, and really, like, I love it. It's just this amazing eyedropper metaphor where you just pick a color with an eyedropper tool and then spray it onto the object. And it's like, this tool is generally much more complex than just coloring because it has materials too, but just changing that metaphor was so great. And I really liked seeing that and assessing that change afterwards. So yeah, just a curiosity of a user researcher to to do that, and yeah, and that's it, pretty much. Thank you very much. Have you got any questions?
Thank you, Anastasiia. And thank you all of you guys for your patience. I'm really yeah, I'm sorry that some technical issues occur, but I think Anastasiia presented us with a lot of great stuff. And I think, yeah, Samili.
Someone said, oh, thank you guys. Samili, yeah? Is that the right way to pronounce your name? You just join in and ask your question. Or you can write the question here, and Brian, yeah, whoever has a question, just join in.
So if I can ask them, or do I have to raise my hand first? Or?
Okay, well.
Yeah, George has raised his hand.
Yeah. Yes. So yes, my question. I was wondering this while you were giving the presentation. What makes this such that someone needs to constantly take a break when they're using VR? Like, you said like every 10 minutes you would ask them like they would need a break, and like then you'd recommend like after 30 minutes you give them a break. But when I do something else that isn't VR, like I wouldn't normally take a break. Like when I play basketball or something, I don't take breaks. Or when I do cardio at the gym, if you're gonna do like a game or something that that takes, let's say, 15 or 20 minutes, you can't really take a break 10 minutes into it. So what makes someone need a break? I guess what I'm asking.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. So the reason why I suggest to ask them whether they want to take a break was that VR is so relatively new and it causes a lot of discomfort. So if someone is constantly sitting and it's their first experience, or like they're not like using VR every day, which I don't know many people who do that, then it might just cause headaches or fatigue, or it might cause motion sickness. So just checking up on them and seeing whether they're okay or whether they're not nauseous is just a good thing. And also, like, again, making sessions shorter is for the same reason, that just not to make them their fatigue or headache, potential headache, or their discomfort like get worse. So it's just for health.
But that's so it's basically because it's still new, so people aren't used to it. That's what basically what you're getting at. Oh, sorry, I'm wondering because like if my interest is game development, and one of the things I wonder is like if we use VR for like game development, like implementing it into like a game like Mario Kart or Call of Duty, crazy examples. But how would that ease people's transition into actually using VR? Like, would it like over time make it I'm gonna say a lot more comfortable because people are constantly using it?
There are actually studies that suggest that you can make yourself more resilient to motion sickness, like cyber sickness and like various things. So if you've used it like for a long time, or if you're using it quite frequently, then it can be okay to make sessions longer, as long as you know that, or as long as the user knows, as long as like you both know, I guess, that like you can take a break, or if you're feeling sick, then you're gonna, like, because in your real life environment, you're a gamer and you're playing, and suddenly you can get sick, you will stop playing, right? You will not continue doing it until you vomit. So, as like, your question is very valid, and I think your question is also really valid for the fact that there are so many games, but what do you do with people who are resilient to motion sickness and who aren't? So I guess checking up on them is important, just to make sure that if they experience discomfort, then you can stop and they know that they can stop. But yeah, I don't know whether I answered your question.
No. Also, the second thing I wanted to ask you, if I can, was like I remember the picture of like the dog where the guy was using the VR, and like there was a square around him, like that was like his safe space for his motion, for whatever he was doing. But I was like wonder, like, even though he might try to stay within the circle or within the square, the objects or people around him may not. So it's like, how would you go about? Yeah, that one exactly. You see the dog; it's just there. The dog, a moving being, it would just like it will move into the square, and so like the guy could kick him or something or hurt him while he's still within his square. Like this, like, so it's like, how would someone go about making it such that when something enters this square, that, like, let's say it's like a baby or something that can harm him or someone else or somebody else, that the person can, I'm gonna say, be notified or like alerted, or how would that disrupt the experience? Because like obviously you don't want anything near him when he's doing.
This is a great question. This is an amazing question, and I think this is a question to actually tackle, like for designers to tackle, because obviously your environment is not necessarily going to match with your VR environment is not necessarily going to match with your real world environment, like a dog or a baby, as you said. I think the challenge here is, so first of all, like again, designers might consider with Oculus Quest, for example, you have cameras, like outwards cameras. So like designers might consider, and developers, whether you can do something and trigger a warning if something's inside of your safe area. And then I think another thing to consider is also different experiences. In the example, like the example of Tvori and Masterpiece Motion, you're mostly to sit down rather than, like, unlike this guy who's standing. So it's not like Beat Saber where you're just like, in the room, like doing lots of different active moves. So if you're sitting and just animating while sitting at your desk, it's less risky, or it's less likely to have a dog or a baby, run onto you, or you rather run onto them. So I think, depending on the experiences, like depending on what experience you're developing, you have to consider those risks, and you have to think how you can address them. So, but I think generally, like, it's an amazing question to think about, because I've seen so many, like, generally people and GIFs that people are sharing on Reddit that just like people are tripping and falling and then just breaking their arms.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. George, where are you from?
I'm in New York City right now.
Nice. Now we're gonna have Samili and Brian, the next questions. So Samili, could you please tell us where are you from and what's your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Samili. I'm from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And I am wondering what steps you and the developers took to alleviate gorilla arm. I've been doing some reading on this, and it seems like there are a lot of options with gestures that are just a little lower. And I'm wondering if that is the approach you took, or if you took a different approach.
Oh, this is a great question too. So the gorilla arm that I saw people experiencing was mainly present at Masterpiece Motion, where they had interface like really large. So not only would the hands would be like up there, like in the air, but also they would just have to stretch them really, really far away. So to alleviate gorilla arm syndrome, it was just making things smaller. So you can actually rest your elbows against your body. So if, like, first of all, it's really nice to actually have an ability to rest your arms on the desk. So like presenting solutions where you can use one arm at a time, but equally either arm. So you can do right hand moves and then left hand moves. This is what Tvori are doing. You can use color picker with your right hand or with your left hand. So once you're resting one, you're using another one, and vice versa. But then also having something where you can have a laser instead of like keyboard. If you have a laser and just point and shoot at a key, that's and at the same time you rest your elbow against your body. That's one thing. Another thing, if you actually have to, like, punch it in the air, that's something that would cause more gorilla arm syndrome than when you're resting it. So I think all solutions are coming from, like, in certain contexts. So once you experience, like with the keyboard, like people experience gorilla arm with the keyboard. So then, like, the guys had to think about what to do in order to avoid that when typing something. So I guess if there was a different experience where people would experience gorilla arm syndrome, they would have to specifically think about that context and how to allow people to rest at least one arm at a time. Did that answer your question? I speak a lot and I never know whether I answered or not.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Samili. I think we have Brian with a question as well.
Yes, thank you, Anastasiia. It's a really interesting talk, and I'm from New York as well, by the way, just down the street from Sarah. I'm a UX designer and researcher as well. I could love to pick your brain over metaphors and how you use them and how you adapted them. That's a discussion over a pint, frankly. But in the meantime, what factors or heuristics did you use to measure the UX across your products?
How do you mean? Could you elaborate?
Like a simple ACOD example is like ease of use. The factors that I'm seeing today are mainly about the physical nature of the interactions, the gorilla arms, for example, as we've been talking about. But have you looked at speed? Because what tasks were you measuring specifically?
Yeah, so like it was different from one tool to another tool, depending on what the team wanted to measure. In the example of, for example, Tsfori and Masterpiece Motion, the main thing for them was to understand onboarding, how the new user can understand how to use tools. So I just created a script.
Like, were you measuring like behavior or how someone thought about things or their reaction, emotional reaction to it?
No, it was purely, I think, mainly just usability.
Task centered.
Yeah, just.
So I guess the circle I'm trying to square is you're looking at the UX, but it's really about the usability of the system. Okay, great. Because I heard UX around. I was really curious about how the UX played a factor in all this. Thank you.
No problem. No, it was yeah, go on.
No, I didn't want to cut you off. Please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to once again say that it was it was task-based when people just trying to assess how easily it would be for a newcomer to understand those tools. So it's just environmental tasks. Like if you wanted to do this, well, how would you go about that? Or like if you wanted to complete this task, how would you go about that? And just observing and seeing like how people go about those things and just drawing patterns from it.
Great, thank you.
Anastasiia, I wanted to ask, I am coming to UX from a little bit of a different perspective. I'm a physical therapist by trade. I've practiced for about 10 years or so now. So all of this is really fascinating to me. And out of curiosity, if I heard you correctly, you said you had about 5 to 8 users that you tested. Did you happen to ask something about, general pre-existing conditions, a history of musculoskeletal injury or something like that, as you assessed their discomfort pre and post?
This is a great question. I did not ask them, okay. But I know or assume, because I knew all the people. It was recruited based on, like, the participants were people that were either my acquaintances or friends who were fallen onto the target audience, who are like designers or who are animators or 3D modelers. So I could assume that they didn't have any pre-existing issues. But yeah, like for example, shoulder ache or gorilla arms, like none of them had like, broken arms or shoulders or like injury history or like severe injury history, I'd say. But at the same time, this is a very good question. I did not, I should have assessed that probably a little bit more in detail.
And I guess not so much a requirement, but just to at least have knowledge of it, to know that if you have somebody that's skewing more moderate or severe post-testing, well, you know what, I did strain my neck like 2 weeks ago, so I'm being more impacted than somebody who's not, having gone through that.
And this is a very good comment. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have more questions there?
Yeah, I do have one. If anybody wants to go before me.
I can see there is a how immersive were users experience, how connected do they feel to VR space? Did the VR tool become second nature ever? So not sure how to answer these questions. So the VR tools did not become second nature to them, no, because they most of the users who I tested on do not have their own headset. So they were tested in in my studio. How immersive? That's a very good question, actually, because thinking about it now, I did not measure immersiveness and how present they were in that experience. But at the same time, that would be more applicable, I guess, for the VR first player shooting game, because that's a game. But for VR creation tool, animation tool, and 3D rigging tool, I think presence and immersiveness were probably less of an issue. So it's okay to have break in presence there, I guess, and communicate with me, for example, with an outside world while you're drawing something. So it's not something that that would disturb their experience much. But now thinking about it, like the immersiveness of user experience for the game, it would be interesting to measure that. However, I didn't measure that. How connected do they feel to the VR space? Yeah, I guess it's the same. No, that's actually a very interesting subject, and it would be very interesting to try to measure immersiveness. Which, if anyone here have ever done, I would be very curious to know how you measured immersiveness.
Oh, Brian, please tell us more.
Yeah.
That would take a while. Maybe a talk. Yeah, I specialize here at SUNY in evaluating mixed reality experiences, not just VR, AR, and across the whole spectrum of mixed reality. So that's why I was asking Anastasiia about the UX side of evaluation. And we just concluded a series of evaluations this past fall that I'm putting together for publication. But yeah, I would love to just go out with everybody here for a pint, but unfortunately we're too far away to have this kind of conversation. But yeah, I'd be happy to let me know in the future talks after the New Year's.
Absolutely. That's a great idea, Brian. I would love to invite you to one of these meetups. We can do that, definitely. And yeah, Anastasiia, sorry, say again.
No, I was just saying that I would love to actually attend Brian's talk now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is exactly what one of the goal of this meetup is all about, right? To connect people and meet people that can contribute in this. And if any of you, Brian is obviously up next for the next event. But if you guys have anything that you want to share, please reach out, because we want to hear it. Absolutely. Yeah, I guess for me, Anastasiia, again, thank you so much. That was super interesting. And I guess I wanted to ask you this question. I'm not sure, but you mentioned that there are some similarities with regular user testing sessions, like you recruit people as you were doing when you were doing regular user testing. You evaluate. You had a way to evaluate the experience and the methodology. You had the methodology to say to categorize your findings and things like that. But what would you say is the main I guess the main difference? But of course, the immersive setting that these people are into while testing. But in terms of methodology, what do you think is the biggest difference?
This is a good question. So I found that setting up things are very different due to the platform that you're using. However, just running the study, it really depends on the experience. So like in terms of recruiting people is the same. In terms of writing or like assessing the script based on your goals of the study, it's the same. Like so findings, so the methodology itself is pretty much the same. It's just about it's just about the environment and like how you set it up, and yeah, I would say the main difference is just in setting things up and running the study itself rather than the methodology.
Mm.
So I'd say if you run like if you're a user researcher who's running usability testing on 2D experiences, and if you have a headset or if you have tools to run usability testing in VR, you can use the exact same methodology. Just consider the setup things because they might be different.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody wants to ask a question about Anastasia's talk? Okay.
Well, thank you again for listening.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Anastasiia. It was great hearing your experience. And thank you, guys. Thank you for attending, and thank you for contributing to this talk. I think we can meet up again, probably with Brian very soon. I will let you know through the meetup. Thanks. Thank you, guys. Brian, you are up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you very much again. Have a great rest of your day, night, and a great break for these festivities break.
And happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Anastasiia, do you want to stay up?
Yeah.